How do we deal with Europe over the last 60 years? We can and will approach it in many ways, country by country, more emphasis on some than others. But in the post-World War II era, we need to bring up certain general events in light of the Cold War, and then they take that tour of various European countries. Europe was much devastated by the Second World War, to be sure. And one of the things that comes up in the later 1940s is something called the Marshall Plan. Named after George Marshall, Joint Chiefs of Staff, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State under President Truman. And the Marshall Plan was a United States effort in the rebuilding of Western Europe, economic aid, to recover from the devastation of the Second World War. There is no doubt in my mind that there is a strong moral element in doing good for those people in Europe who suffered greatly. There are, of course, other motives at work at the same time. Why not Eastern Europe, satellites now of Russia? Well, Russia, in its historic secretiveness, as the lines of the Cold War hardened, will have various objections. If the Marshall Plan includes looking internally into Russia and showing from Russia's point of view its great weaknesses after the Second World War, and the orneriness of the growing Cold War conflict between the United States and Russia, preventing and acceding to the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan dealing with Western Europe also is building up that part of Europe as a Cold War defense against the Russians, to build that economic power base, and also, by the way, in terms of the investment of American business in Western Europe, is also beneficial economically for the United States. If, as I've said previously, a war economy continuing and all the profitability of that war economy, certainly the Marshall Plan itself will play a role in that war economy profitability. So there is a humane aspect to it, and there is an economic aspect to it, a self-interest aspect to it as well. All of these things together. As I'm sure I have said before, mixed motives are always present in any kind of major decision making. Along with the generosity of the Marshall Plan was the formation of NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, formed in 1949. Here was indeed a military alliance concerning Western Europe down through Southern Europe to semi-surround, so to speak, Russia. And it was part of a Cold War policy which was at the heart of the Cold War foreign policy of the United States, something called containment, that is to say, to contain Russia where it currently was, hem them in. And the other part of that containment policy was that if Russia should ever try to expand, massive retaliation, the threat to hit Russia with everything that the United States had, including nuclear weapons. Containment, massive retaliation. The cornerstone of American foreign policy under Presidents Truman, under President Eisenhower, and in many ways afterwards as well. So you have this NATO alliance that's formed. Itself beneficial to the American economy with regard to the military spending that will go on to account for this military alliance. Russia, of course, their response is going to be defensive. They will counter with something called the Warsaw Pact of Eastern European satellite nations and Russia, its own military alliance against NATO. And so you have two armed camps that face each other. It should be pointed out, and this is in line with my argument about Russia's middle position at the end of the Second World War, what I've tried to describe as basically a defensive position, a position for Russian security in the face of the devastation of the previous war. That in fact, what you have going on here, from Russia's point of view,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?